How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Hall of Film. Now today is the second ever voting period of the Hall of Film, and as you can see on the screen, today is the new Hollywood time period, which is from 1960 to 1989. Now the first time period, which was the modern period, was a great success. Had more votes than I thought we would for the first one, and I can't thank you enough. So if this is your first time seeing a video of mine, then quick little rundown. We induct 10 people each voting period from each time period, actors, actresses, directors, films. You will vote your 10. This is my personal 10. Whoever is your first place gets 10 points, second place gets 9, so on and so forth, to your 10th only gets 1 point. And at the end of the voting period, which is about a month, whoever the top 10s are in each category will be Hall of Film members. Now, this is a time period I am both familiar and unfamiliar with, so a lot of research has gone into this, and I've chosen a vast array of things that I've personally seen or know, mixed with things that I found in research and reputation and everything. So without further ado, we will start off with the films this time. So in 10th place I have 1960's Breathless by Jean-Luc Godard, a French New Wave movie. I'm not as familiar with it, but doing the research, this constantly comes up in all-time lists, so I feel like this has to be a top 10 to start with. Coming in ninth, we have Spike Lee's masterpiece 1989's Do the Right Thing. Of course, does a lot about speaking about police brutality and racial tensions, and unfortunately, as the years have gone on, that's only become more prevalent and a more impactful movie as time's gone by. So that is my ninth. Then we have 1975, Jaws. I feel like I don't really need to say much. It's Jaws, you know. One of the most impactful, influential movies, and one of the first blockbusters ever, and started that blockbuster era that we're still living in now. Then I have Star Wars: A New Hope, the first ever Star Wars movie, of course, directed by George Lucas. Again, I don't feel like with the films I need to say much. Then we have Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Again, one of the most influential films, absolute groundbreaking. Yeah, again, not much I can say. Then we have Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece 2001: A Space Odyssey. Um, Again, it's one of the most influential films ever made. I'm going to be saying that a lot. This is a very influential time period of everything. And then we have a movie that has stuck with me ever since I watched it. 1985, directed by Elem Kilmov. We have Come and See. Um, it for 8 year he fought 8 years of censorship from the Soviet Union to make this film. He never made another film after this because he literally said, "I've said all I need to say in film." Um, One of the most haunting films that I have ever seen, and even though I've seen it once, it's stuck with me, and it's just incredible. If you've somehow not seen it, there is the full movie on YouTube to go and watch. Please go and see it. It is horrifying. Then third place, if you know me, I love westerns. I've got the poster of it right there. We have Sergio Leone's The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. This is a movie I could talk about for ages and ages and ages. I won't, but one of my favourite films ever. I think it's still probably the best western ever made. It's just a masterpiece. Then top two, you could probably guess just seeing the time period and thinking, well, I know what one and two are. Number two is 1974's The Godfather Part 2, and first place, receiving my 10 points, is The Godfather. Francis Ford Coppola's just masterpieces. There's an argument that the second one's better than the first, and that's rare in everything. But yeah, that is my film list. I think pretty guessable in some and not guessable in others. Moving on to the directors. Coming in at 10th place, we have John Carpenter, of course, did Halloween, one of the most influential horrors of the time. Escape from New York, The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China, They Live. He had a great like 1980s span. Um, and the more I delve into his films, he's becoming one of my favourite directors. Then we have Alfred Hitchcock. Even though this isn't in his peak years, you've still got Psycho, The Birds, Torn Curtain, Topaz, Frenzy, Family Plot. So many, of his well-known movies, and of course Psycho and the Bugs being two of his most iconic films. Then we have Ingmar Bergman, someone again I'm not familiar with, not seen any of their films, but researching and knowing by reputation, this is one of the greatest filmmakers ever, arguably, and I could easily see him being in your top three when you guys vote. Um, did Cries and Whispers, Persona, Fanny and Alexander, Scenes from a Marriage, Through a Glass Darkly. I will be for sure diving in to his filmography because I'm very intrigued. Then we have Andrei Tarkovsky, again, someone I know through reputation, not necessarily seen anything. Um, Only did 7 films ever, and you might be thinking, why is he in there? Um, just again, do some research. He's highly regarded in the film industry. His fifth movie, Stalker, actually unfortunately contributed to his untimely early death. He was only 54, but they filmed it in a old hydro power plant. Except that where they filmed downstream, there was a lot of obviously radioactive waste, and him and some of the other people that worked on the movie unfortunately developed the same type of cancer, and that's what took his life. But again, do your research, look into his films because, again, widely regarded as one of the greatest filmmakers ever. Then we have a personal favourite of mine, the more I go into his movies, Akira Kurosawa. Again, not his peak time period like Hitchcock, but you've still got Bad Sleep Well, Yojimbo, Sanjuro, High and Low, Redbeard, Ran. Of course, one of the greatest filmmakers ever, as it's constantly said, because it's true. I don't really need to say more. Then we have Sergio Leone, of course, did Dollars trilogy, Once Upon a Time in the West, Once Upon a Time in America. One of my personal favourite directors. Just an incredible, incredible director. I wish he had been able to make more movies. But he's definitely in my top favourite directors ever. Then we have Francis Ford Coppola. Um, this could be number one for a lot of people, which I understand because you've got Godfather Part 1, Part 2, Apocalypse Now. Um, you've got The Conversation as well, which is a very underrated film. But again, this is peak Coppola. Then we've got in third place Steven Spielberg. You've got Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Jaws, as I mentioned in the film list, Indiana Jones, The Colour Purple, E.T. This is when the blockbuster era started, and he really was the leader of that shift in cinema. And of course, he got in the modern time period as a Hall of Fame member. So, can he be the first two-timer? If not, I think this man will. Martin Scorsese. You've got Mean Streets, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, King of Comedy, After Hours. One of the greatest filmmakers to ever live, Hall of Fame member, very easily in the modern time period, and I do believe this is his peak. You can argue so. I'm imagining he and Spielberg will both be two-time Hall of Filmers. And then coming in at my number one is Stanley Kubrick. You've got Spartacus, Lolita, Doctor Strangelove, which is a movie I need to revisit. I wasn't particularly fond of it, but I need to rewatch it. 2001: Space Odyssey, Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon, The Shining, Full Metal Jacket. One of the great filmmakers. This is his time period, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure a lot of you will think that as well. Moving on to the actresses. 10th place, we've got Elizabeth Taylor. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Butterfield, Cleopatra, which was the most expensive film ever made at the time. World record of 65 costume changes as well. I think she got paid like $1 million. Again, not necessarily her peak time period, but I do feel like she had enough to warrant a nomination for me. Then we have Jane Fonda, Clute, Coming Home, They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Barbarella, of course. Um, the daughter of Henry Fonda, who I'm sure will be a Hall of Filmer in the next time period. Then we have Dame Maggie Smith. Of course, for a lot of people, including myself, she's always the person Downton Abbey and Harry Potter. But reading into it, I never realised how many Oscar nominations she had and how well received she was. So for me, like Judi Dench, who got in the one time period, I do believe Maggie Smith should also get in. Next we have Faye Dunaway, of course, Network, Chinatown, Bonnie and Clyde, collaborator with Woody Allen, who isn't on my director list, neither is Roman Polanski. Of course, if you know what they did, then that's personally why I haven't included them. You can vote them, but for me, that's not who I want to acknowledge necessarily, even though they are iconic filmmakers. Then we have Anne Bancroft, The Graduate, Elephant Man, The Miracle Worker. Again, researching a very iconic, well respected, well loved actress. Then we have Glenn Close, of course, still making wonderful films now, but she was in Fatal Attraction, Dangerous Liaisons, The Big Chill, according to The Gap, in a lot of great movies in this time period. Then we have Liv Ullmann, who was a long-term collaborator with Ingrid Bergman, who is in my director's list, but reading into Liv Ullmann, widely regarded as the greatest European actress of all time. Persona, Cries and Whispers, Scenes from a Marriage, a lot more films as well. Then we have Audrey Hepburn, of course, one of the most iconic, well-known people in history, alongside with like people like Marilyn Monroe. But during this time period, you've got Breakfast at Tiffany's, Charade, My Fair Lady, How to Steal a Million, amongst a lot of other iconic films. Coming in at my number two, we have Katharine Hepburn, of course, the most tied winningest actor at the Oscars, with I believe it is 3 wins. But you've got The Lion in Winter, On Golden Pond, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, a lot more films that she's been in as well. If I'm guessing as well, she might also get inducted into the next time period as well. Then coming in at number one, this is very much her time period in my opinion. We have Meryl Streep, of course, Sophie's Choice, Kramer versus Kramer, The Deer Hunter, Out of Africa, a lot more movies as well. This is where she's probably at her peak. I believe it was like 7 Oscar nominations as well during this time period as well. So that is my top 10 of the actresses. Now moving on finally to the actors. We've got Toshiro Mifune, of course, a long-term collaborator with Akira Kurosawa, as you can see with the poster there. During this time period, you've got The Bad Sleep Well, Yojimbo Sanjuro, High and Low, Redbeard. And again, like Kurosawa, I believe in the next time period they will also be getting in pretty easy. Then we've got Clint Eastwood, Probably could have been higher on my list, but I want to mix my personal opinion and just looking at it objectively. Of course, Dollars Trilogy, Dirty Harry, Power Rider, Escape from Alcatraz, The Outlaw Josie Wales, iconic time period for Clint, the last peak time period for westerns as well in cinema. Then we've got Steve McQueen, of course, the King of Cool, The Great Escape, Magnificent Seven, Papillon, Bullet, Sand Pebbles, one of the most iconic, well-known actors of all time. Then we have Paul Newman, of course, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, Cool Hand Luke, which is his iconic role, The Hustler, The Sting, The Verdict. Um, Again, just one of the best actors of his generation for sure. Then we have Harrison Ford. Um, this time period was incredible for him. The Conversation, of course, all three Indiana Joneses. I if refuse to acknowledge the last two that they did. It's a trilogy for me. Of course, Blade Runner. Then you've got Star Wars as well. Just an iconic actor and one of the first probably big blockbuster actors as well. Then we have Dustin Hoffman, of course, Midnight Cowboy, Marathon Man, Kramer versus Kramer, The Graduate, Papillon as well, Rain Man. One of the best actors of all time. This was very much his peak time period as well. Then we've got John Cazale. He was only in 5 movies. He was in Godfather Part 1, Part 2, The Conversation, Dog Day Afternoon, and The Deer Hunter. He was in 5 movies and they were all nominated or won Best Picture. It's the most ridiculous 5 film streak I think any actor's ever had. And what an incredible actor as well. Then third place, Jack Nicholson, The Shining, Chinatown, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Batman, Terms of Endearment, a lot of movies as well. This is again very much his time period, probably his peak, especially his stardom. Like, what an incredible actor. Then the top two. Second, we've got Al Pacino, of course, Godfather Part 1, Part 2, Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon, Scarface. Of course, he's got kind of a reputation for overacting probably now, but this time period he was untouchable. He was incredible. And then speaking of untouchable and incredible, we have my first place, Robert De Niro. Mean Streets, Godfather Part 2, Taxi Driver, Deer Hunter, Raging Bull, True Confessions, King of Comedy, Once Upon a Time in America. I can keep going. This was peak Robert De Niro. Of course, last couple years, other than Killers of the Flower Moon, he'd kind of become a shell of himself, but he still got in the modern wing as well because that 90s run as well was unreal. But this was peak De Niro, peak Pacino, and it was a great time to watch movies. So that is my lists, my top tens. Of course, if you guys enjoyed, make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, and more importantly, comment below in the comments your top tens or over on my Twitter, which is always linked on the channel. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video.